office oversees all of the home and community-based waivers, including the developmental disability and the supported living services waiver. And so Jenny and I specifically work on those supported employment services that are contained in that developmental disability and supported living services waiver. So guys, if I start using acronyms and you yell at me in chat, and I will slow down. Sometimes I get going and I forget that I'm using acronyms. So um, okay, so really what we're here and what we're excited about talking about today is a budget request that we have put forward. And in this budget request, we are asking our state legislator for the authority to implement an outcome-based model for supported employment. And so really what's this is a proposal now that still has to work through that entire process, which should end right around March. But because this is such a big kind of change and we're really excited and we want to make sure that we're implementing this correctly, we really want to start talking about this now and really start engaging with our community around how to make this model actually achieve the goals that we're setting out to hopefully achieve. So quick little timeline before we get going. So now through spring, like I was saying, we're working through that budgetary process. Anytime you hear news from the state legislature around the long bill, that's the budget bill. That's the big bill that has the Colorado budget in there. We are currently part of that long bill. So anytime you hear about the long bill moving forward, this is part of that. But during this time, we also need to really engage in on how this is going to work. What is the overall process? Right now, we have a really good kind of outline, but now we need to start thinking about that detail and start really pulling that together. And we need to do that as a community to make sure that this is successful. Then this summer and through kind of the fall of 2025, this is when we kind of take those designs and really start to kind of build those real blueprints, those pieces where, okay, this is what things can be built upon. And that's what happens kind of in that winter. That's where we're starting to build our computer systems for case managers and for providers, where we're starting to look at data and how we're tracking data and those types of things. We're building those systems during that time. That then jumps us into that springtime where we're testing those systems, but this is also the really important time to really start making sure providers and members understand what implementation of this is going to look like. Because at that point, we really need to start thinking about how we can implement this with as least disruption to members and also putting providers at the forefront to make sure that they are successful. And then summer of 2026, this whole system we are hoping goes live. And at that point, this is going to be a slow transition. So every time so the member, the person who's in the waivers will be transitioned to this new system at their CSR or at their annual planning process. That doesn't mean that new folks who want to come in and start using it can't do that before their CSR, but for people who are currently working, this transition would happen at that annual person planning planning time. So before we kind of hop into this, I just want to make sure that people kind of understand or kind of can visualize what our current system kind of looks like. So in home and community-based waivers, what we have is we have kind of two different buckets of supported employment. On the right of the screen, we really see this home and community-based group employment. These are more of those jobs that are usually run by a provider. They are designed for people with disabilities. And so those are really kind of contained within kind of the group side of things. What we are proposing really will not affect this as much as it will affect the left side of what we're seeing here, which is the individual supported employment. This is the services that, as the state, we want everybody to be able to access, because these are the supports that help people with real jobs that are in the community, jobs where they have the opportunity to be fully integrated into a community of their choice, where they have the opportunity to move up and to grow and to start to have a real career and kind of move forward. What we know now is that how our current system works, it's really hard for providers to kind of maintain these programs and really make them very successful and able to support a lot of people. And we're going to get into why that is and what that looks like right now. So to back up a little bit, why are we doing this? Why do we think this is so important? It's because Colorado is an employment first state. And what employment first really is it's this philosophy that we need to build systems that allow folks with disability to be successful in work. And we need to be thinking about how we not only build those systems, but what does that employment actually mean? That employment should be competitive, it should be integrated, and people should have the right to grow. They should be paid the same wage as anybody else that they're working with. It should be equal. And that really what people need is they need the supports and services to support them in being successful. And so really what we're doing from the state level is we're trying to design a system that supports members and in turn supports providers in being successful at competitive integrated, community integrated employment. So we also need to kind of not only think about that kind of integrated employment piece, but part of that integration really has to do with independence. And so, really, for people to be truly successful, just like you and I, when we're learning a job, the more successful we become, the more independent in that job we become. And so, really, we want to think about how do we support people in being successful at integrated community jobs while also maintaining and gaining more and more independence over time. So these are the ultimate goals of what we really are trying to achieve through thinking about this. Give me 1 second, have a drink of water. So currently, that system, that kind of those bubbles I was showing earlier, um, we pay this out on a fee for service basis. The problem with fee for service is that it's paying for every unit or every hour that the service is directly delivered. The problem when we want providers to think about fading out or thinking about working themselves out of that job coaching job is that we are also asking providers to reduce their revenue. And that makes those programs really unstable. So one of the things we needed to think about as we were kind of marching down this road is how do we support providers in really being able to financially be successful in supporting people and investing in people's outcomes through work. And so that's a huge kind of philosophy shift that I think is important for us just to kind of touch on is that we're not talking anymore about a set of services where we're just paying to deliver service. We're now thinking about more as the outcome of the member or the individual being successful in an integrated job in the community. That's what we want to invest in as a system. And so we want to make sure that that investment in those resources and supports not only are available, but are appropriate to make sure that the long-term prospects of the individual and what the promise of employment can really offer people is fully achieved by our members and by the people that we serve and the people you guys serve within the waivers. As you can kind of see, we've also looked at other states. There's these similar models have been successful already in other states. But what's even more exciting is that we actually did a pilot, a multi-year pilot. We used ARPA funding to jump into this, to really kind of start to think about how does this work in the state of Colorado. And so what we did is we had about 40 participants who utilized the pilot services instead of their waiver services for a period of time. The ones that we pulled out were the ones that used the services for 12 months. And this is not a concurrent 12 months. We could have one person that started in May of 2023, while we have the next person who started in January of 2021. And so really what we looked at was just the number of months. And what we found when we looked at all of that was that the participants on the job independence, which means that fading piece, that person is becoming more independent, needing less of that kind of that job coaching support actually rose by 8% over 12 months. Kind of compare that to similar or the same cohort of waiver members utilizing normal waiver supports, and they only rose about 4%. So we see that there is an increase, but really what's more important is it's great if we can have all of this fading happening and all of those kinds of things, but if the member's not successful at the job, then this isn't a successful model. But what we found was in that same period of time, those members actually increased their hours worked by, oh gosh, by 11%. There it is. I have part of that blocked by 11% over that same 12-month period. With that also, so what that means is it shows that that integration and that piece and really believing that the member and setting the expectations that the member can be independent and successful in their job led to them having more hours, which means more income and all of the great stuff that comes along with that. So we're really excited about this. This is why we're really pushing forward and really wanting to get this budget request through. One of the other cool things about this is that not only does this new system help stabilize kind of the revenue and the business practices around this, but because it's efficient and it's more efficient than our current system is, this is actually projected to save the state of Colorado money over the long term. So that's another reason why we're also really excited about this. So before I go any further, I really want to shout out all of the pilot providers. These are the providers that worked really hard at making sure that the pilot in this model is successful. And they not only helped us kind of realize how to make it better, but because of them, we were able to show how successful it could be. The thing is we need your guys' help to continue that conversation during this design period to really be able to make sure that as we scale this out, as we get this to larger parts of Colorado, that we all are marching together and making sure that everyone knows how to use it and that people are supported in becoming successful in how to use this new system. Before I hop any further, any questions on just background stuff, fee for service, anything that I use an acronym nobody that maybe I only knew because I made it up 2 seconds ago or okay, cool. Ah, all right. So what does this model actually look like? Now that we kind of know why we kind of want to go in that direction, what are we actually talking about? And so it's really important, I think, for people who are not mirrored in this world to kind of think about three kind of distinct time periods that our services kind of utilize and work with. And that first one is this job development model or kind of this pre-employment. Somebody's interested in work, they're not really sure what's available or maybe what they're interested in or what they or even down to if I work, do I start to lose benefits? Do I lose my Medicaid? What does that mean? All of those kinds of things are kind of in this pre-employment piece. And so right now, what we have in our current system is we have that fee for service kind of thing happening where we will see folks sign up and use job development for multiple years, when in reality, it really should be a pretty short period of kind of time that's driving towards an outcome like a career profile or things like that. And so when this new model, it's really thinking about how do we support providers in working with members to get the needed information to get them really lined up and set to work with DVR. Because once they hit DVR, this is that second time period. That's where you get that job placement. That's where you get the real job development, really making sure that the members match to the job, that the things that will make them successful at that job is identified so that they're moving forward with more confidence. And then finally, when we come back out of DVR, is where we start to be thinking about these long-term job coaching pieces. And so somebody goes with DVR, they get a job, they work with DVR until they get to stability. Then DVR closes the case, And that member then comes back and utilizes their waiver services for kind of that extended long-term job coaching. What's different about this and how this is not fee for service or traditional fee for service, we can get into if we can argue all day if it's true fee for service or not, but we don't need to go there. Is that instead of the provider being paid for every hour that they are with that member and doing job coaching, instead of doing that, we're going to pay for every hour the member works. So in other words, we are paying providers to get out of the way. We want providers to be able to go in, support the member, help them master those job skills, and then get out of the way and allow the person to move forward and be successful. So it's a paradigm shift. But again, when we're thinking about that outcome of investing in the person's success, and that's what we're going for, it starts to make a lot more make a lot more sense. Not only that, but every time the member becomes successful or gains more hours, that means the provider actually gets paid more hours. So there's an investment in the member being successful from that provider standpoint, because the more successful they are, the more from that revenue standpoint the provider is going to make. So that sounds all fun, but that also means that we also have to embed that fading process into it. And so what we've done is we've created three distinct job coaching phases. And so for the first 90 days after somebody comes out of DVR, that's where you get the highest rate. That is with the assumption that you're going to be with the person most of the time during that period, really helping them adjust, learning those final and mastering those final skills, and really kind of focusing in on that. These are also all going to be tiered. So they're going to be tiered rates based on the member's support levels. And then after that 90 days, we kind of start to go into this extended job coaching where the rate will actually go down. But that's based on the idea that, and we don't know these, I'm just picking this number out of a hat, but that's that the average person has working in this system has reduced their job coaching by like 20%. And so therefore we reduce that rate by that much. We're still paying out for every hour the person works, and not for every hour the provider is actually providing the job coaching. And then finally, we get kind of into this maintenance phase where we do need to really talk about best ways and best practices in utilizing that, so that because we could go as far as using flat fees. So everybody would just get, if they have a job, you would get a flat fee for that month. Or do we continue to do the every hour the person works? So those are some of the kind of the questions that we're still working towards and really need everybody's input to really get there. Finally, with all of that, we're also going to have some incentive and outcome-based payments. I'm going to tell you right now, more than likely, we are going to copy DVR as much as we humanly can. But some of these are incentives and some of these are milestone payments. The milestone payments really are designed to help providers with additional resources during some of those transitional times. So like when somebody's going into that maintenance level of job coaching. The incentive payments are really for when members achieve, uh, uh, outcomes that we perceive as things that really show that they're being successful, which is like, having wages 25% above the minimum wage, or that their work hours increased by 10%. And so we need to work through that. But one of the things that we need to do is we need to make sure that we're sequencing these correctly, so that not only are they lining up with VR services and utilizing those milestone payments, but also are lined up and being used correctly in the flow of how these services go. And so that's really another piece that we need to engage in and talk about and think about. Okay, guys, any questions?
Yes, Adam, a question came in on the chat. How will the rates work if we are working on job development while waiting for the intake from DVR?
So that's a great question, because you're already going to the places where we need to be thinking, right? And so one of I can't say this is how it's going to work today, but some of the options that have been kind of talked about would be similar to how it is now. As long as that referral is made to VR, then the job development can be authorized. We've also heard though that it just being a miles or a payment at the end of the service really kind of it puts the provider kind of on the line to kind of have they have to put a lot of resources out first before they get paid for it. And so we also are trying to think about how we could set that up so that maybe there's some money for getting started, and then we pay for the piece at the end. So again, that might be way convoluted, but those are the questions that we need to ask, we need to delve into, and we need to work together uh, to make it so that it works right, that it's not clunky. So hopefully that was sort of an answer to the question. I hate giving bureaucratic answers, and I felt like that was a bureaucratic answer. Okay. Anything else, guys?
I have a question.
Please.
How will this apply to members with customized employment?
So, oh, go ahead.
No, I mean, if they have a customized employment model or their own businesses.
Right, right. So those are kind of, so this should really align with customized employment. A lot of the customized employment, the actual work around the discovery profile, if you know, like if we design that career profile, how does that line up with the discovery profile so that when we get into, or when the member starts with DVR, then that customized employment can really be used full effective, right? Because during the VR time, that's where you do have the job carving, that's where you do have the kind of discovery process and all of those kinds of things. So the goal would be that this would line up to it. And remember that customized employment is considered a best practice. And one of the keys that we've learned from other states is that to really make these successful, you have to identify those best practices and make sure that this system integrates and works with those best practices. And so since customized employment is identified as one of those, this system has to work with it or it's not going to work very well, if that makes sense. As far as supported self-employment, that is something we need to engage in on a much larger scale than even this. This model will support people who have their own businesses, who are walking that way. We need to have more conversations about that. But also, I think we really need to also have those conversations in partnership with VR, just like we need to have all of these with DVR, or the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. And Rachel can wave as she's our VR person. But really talk about how supported self-employment and what that process looks like, and how to make sure that people are getting the support that they need to be successful with their self-employment.
I'm sorry, one more question. How will this affect people with currently established work and customized employment and their own businesses?
You are asking such great questions. One of the And you know what? Actually, can we hang on to that one? Because in 2 slides, I'm going to kind of talk about it. Is that okay?
Perfect. Thank you.
Cool.
All right,
Any
Adam,
other questions?
we
Go
do have a
ahead.
few more coming in.
Cool.
One is just, can we get a copy of the slides? And we will be posting the slides and the recording of the presentation on the supported employment resources website. So I added that link to the chat. So check back there. We'll have it available to you. I was also private messaged got a private direct message that I want to raise for folks because I think it's a good question. So there's a concern that this sort of setup might incentivize programs to favor folks that are to just work with people who sorry, it moved on me. Sorry, who don't have income restrictions, like those who receive SSI and SSDI.
That's a uh, that's a great question. Again, I think this is part of the larger conversation that we need. And I think one of the things that may help with that is that part of that career profile, we need to also roll in another service that we offer through the waivers, which is benefits planning, and really starting to not only support members with understanding how their benefits are affected by income, but also supporting those providers and understanding how that is also being how income affects services and supports and public benefits and all of that kind of stuff. Um, I think that that's one way, but we also need, that's again where we may need to have more conversations around the milestone payments and the incentive payments. Do we, because the other cohort of people that we saw really get a huge uptake at the end of the pilot, but in the beginning we were worried were folks with higher support needs. And so how do we incentivize and how do we ensure that the rates cover those pieces? But then also, how do we offer things like benefits planning to help members and providers kind of navigate this nebulous world of income restrictions and resource restrictions and different things like that. So kind of utilizing all of those tools is really important part of the conversation that we need to pull forward.
Thanks, Adam. Another question that came up is, what if someone needs full support and fading is not possible?
So that's a couple of other things that we again we need to jump into. Some of the resources and tools that we currently have is if somebody has a significant safety concern, it's more from that kind of due to a medical issue or a behavioral issue. We have things like workplace assistance that can really come in and kind of help take over some of that support when the job coaching is no longer needed. Now, how is workplace assistant and this model going to interact? That's something again we need to kind of talk about. The other thing too is that if we have that maintenance, I think that's one of the parts of the conversation around how we actually pay out on that job coaching maintenance, right? So if we do things like if we do a flat rate, does that support those individuals who are only ever going to be at 50% of job coaching fading or those different types of things? So really pulling in different resources and tactics and thinking through those things is really how we're going to address them. What I love now though is that we're all kind of moving in that direction, really thinking about it from that system standpoint, which for this to be really successful is I really think as a community is a place we need to start. We need to start there.
Thanks, Adam. Another question that came in is another big hitting one. Who will be tracking the hours that the person is working at their employment?
I laugh at this one because actually this is kind of a big question nationally. Um, it So all the states, it's up to the provider. So the provider will, during the billing process, will more than likely, I mean, we're still building out those systems, more than likely will have to report how many hours the member worked and how many hours of direct job coaching they delivered. And so how though we do that, what kind of documentation we need or the provider needs to keep to make sure that everything is provable and above board and all of those different types of things is a huge question, and it's one of those that we need to really work towards. The hope would be that we're not downloading a bunch of different things, but that maybe providers are keeping copies of pay stubs or some other mechanism that shows how many hours the member worked in a file or different things like that. So again, and one of the reasons why we need to start talking about it now is because that piece, that computer built piece, starts this summer. And so even though we're not going to implement this until 2026, we're going to start building the computer systems for it a year beforehand. And that's why we need to have some of these conversations now.
All right, another question just came in. If you are utilizing the workplace assistance service after fading from coaching, and then there is an issue or a new task arises, will the job coach be able to come back in and support? It's kind of the first part. And then the second part is, sorry, small screen here. Would it restart the steps of job coaching reimbursement, or would it be a flat reimbursement rate?
So that's another huge piece. So most states allow for members to kind of move between the levels when different things pop up. However, it's going to be really, really important for us to define what's the expectation from the job coaching perspective in each one of those buckets. Because what we need to do is we need to set very clear thresholds of when the change to the job or change that the person is experiencing personally or whatnot has elevated to the point that they're going to need like 2 weeks worth of intensive job coaching, those different types of things, as compared to the member got a new manager. They've had a lot of managers, but they really do need a couple of hours that first couple of weeks to make sure that they're communicating well with that manager, those different types of things. So we do need to talk about where those thresholds are. But yes, we do anticipate that there needs to be, and that there will be a way for providers to request to get that higher rate if things change, um, uh, or if the member needs more support.
Another question in a similar vein, I think. How will it work if a person has a job for 2 years and then they get laid off or something and they need to start the process all over again?
So I'm going to talk about this more in kind of the flip to it of, again, I think that one of the promises that these kinds of models have, and one of the promises of employment first in general, is that we need to start thinking about this as a career path. And so during anybody's career path, they're going to switch jobs. I've been laid off in my professional world. How does that all interact? And what does that mean for them re-engaging either for VR? Do we need to go back to that pre kind of that career profile and make an update to that so that the member is more successful at moving forward? All of those different types of things. So anytime somebody wants to change or they lose a job or anything like that, the idea would be that you could go back as far as the member needs and re-engage the system to find a new job, and that doesn't mean that they have to go back to the beginning. It may just mean that they get a quick shot of job development somewhere and they work with VR, all of that kind of stuff. So before I go off in the deep end, I'll stop there. Hopefully that helped.
Thanks, Adam. We have what I think is more of a comment than a question, but you might want to address it. Having providers track the hours will add more admin, non-billable hours for providers to pay, and the reflection is that is concerning.
And guys, honestly, we want to make this as administratively as like easy as possible. There are some things that we do need to make sure that we have, and part of that is really thinking about how we make this streamlined, make it easy for providers, but also are tracking the things that we need. Like right now, and I thank everybody who does this, but right now we send out a yearly point in time survey where we're not asking. I mean, we don't have a way to pay you guys for that, and most all the providers in the state actually are send that back to us. Really, what we're talking about is that information just being shared through our billing system monthly. So it's not that I wouldn't consider it necessarily being unpaid, but it's just a new version of billing. But again, we want to make that as easy and as streamlined as possible. And so that's part of why we're digging in now and looking at other states as well to make sure that we have the best system.
Yeah, so speaking of system level questions, when will supported employment be available to people on the brain injury and elderly, blind, and disabled waivers?
So So one of the things that we actually need to do when we're thinking about that, so I don't want to bury the lead. So when I was hired for the position that I'm currently in, one of the things that we talked about was how do we start to expand these services into other waivers. One of the things that by doing that is one of the things we realized is that the current system, supported employment system in the DD and SLS waivers are not the most stable set of services. And so what we really want to do is make sure that we can design and implement a service system that really is effective at really driving and supporting people with employment, and then really start to look at what do other populations need, how do we extend services there, those kinds of things. So it's not going to happen tomorrow, but it is in the long-term plan of this, and I can't give you a specific date.
Great. So one last question in the chat so far. If you guys have more questions, please add them in. We've got this kind of time for getting your questions answered. But the question in the chat is, what about those individuals that have closed their case with the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation a long time ago?
This is a great question. And actually, it's a great in question because I think it will help us kind of get back into kind of where we go next. But really, where we want to start thinking about having that transition, starting really making sure the person is fading out, because when at that CSR and when they move into this new system, we would want them to be placed into that right funding level. Now, we're still negotiating and we need to talk about how that transition works. Is there a couple of months where everybody will start at that highest and then drop into those different types of things? But really part of this is really kind of thinking forward about how we need to train and how we need to get information out to people, providers and members, so that they're ready to go and that this isn't a big shock. And so with that kind of leads us into this next kind of section, which is really why we're here today, is to say we need your help. We need your guys' support to help us figure this out. And before I go any further, Rachel, you have your hand up.
I just wanted to mention, and you might have said it and I missed it, but if someone has been closed with DVR long ago, and needs our services, please come back. We're not ever a one-stop shop. So if they need the whole level of services, then we do want to go back through the system. So hopefully that helps
Thank
too.
you, Rachel. Yes, thank you.
And I really like your outfit, Adam.
Oh, thank you. I've had this jacket since college. Anyway, so what we need and the way we're thinking about this kind of stakeholder engagement really is kind of threefold, right? So we have these general stakeholder meetings, and really what these meetings are is kind of what we're doing right now, which is we're giving kind of general information, really trying to share kind of the direction in which we're moving and what we're trying to do, and then to go back and forth with questions and to learn from the concerns and from the thoughts that everybody has. But we then also need to really, because this is so significant, we need to have smaller groups. We need to have the ability to really dig into those things. And so what we want to do and what we've started to do is actually partner with some community organizations that I'm going to hit right after this, that are going to focus on different parts of this model and how to roll it out and what it's going to look like and all of those kinds of pieces. So we're going to go there next. But finally, and really that base and really what Jenny and I's role in all of this is that for us to understand kind of the internal kind of structure. So what do the feds, what does the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, what will they approve and what will they not approve? How does this fit into the budget that we gave to the state legislature? How does all of that work together? And so that we can give you guys a framework in which to kind of start to fill in those pieces and really start to fill out that blueprint of what we're doing. So Jenny and I's role is really down at this base level that we then can take, and we can work with the small groups and with you guys in these general stakeholder groups to really make sure that we're, one, communicating with you guys, but two, really digging in and making sure that these systems are going to support members and going to support providers in really achieving these outcomes that we're wanting. And so really the first group is the one that is in both of these groups that we're going to talk about, APSE, the Colorado Association for People Supporting Employment First, and then the Employment First Advisory Partnership, which is on the next slide. Both of these are community partnerships that have been around for a long time and that are fully engaged in supported employment, pushing supported employment forward. And so really we want to team up from a HIPPUF standpoint with these organizations. And so, from our perspective, what we really need from like APSE is really help with that training, but not just training for the DSPs or those direct care professionals, but also middle management, as well as really understanding this also from a business perspective. And so really looking at that and transition and all of that kind of stuff is really what we're hoping for APSE. And so before we move on, I want to see if Tiffany wants to say anything about APSE, let you guys know kind of next steps and what's going on there.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. And hello, everyone. My name is Tiffany Cron, and I am the director of the Colorado Office of Employment First. But today, I'm here in my role as the vice president of our Colorado chapter of the Association for People Supporting Employment First, so APSE. So APSE is the only national membership organization that's focused exclusively on employment first, and we're helping to facilitate full inclusion of people with disabilities in the workplace and community. So there on screen, our local chapter, we've created both a vision and a mission. So our vision is that all people with disabilities have access to competitive, inclusive employment in the general workforce. And we value that we believe that everyone can and should work and have the dignity of determining their career path. And I think I said mission, that's values. You can learn more via our website there, but yeah, specifically for this work and effort, we have created an ad hoc committee specifically focused on this outcome-based supported employment work. And we are interested in getting more members, more APSE members to join this committee. So we have here linked in the slide deck, which you all will get, how to get involved to join APSE or the general interest for this ad hoc committee. I'm also going to post them in the chat. So those are coming right now. So our ad hoc committee is for APSE members. If you don't know if you're an APSE member, send me an email. I'll put my information in the chat. And if you know you're not and you want to join, please do. They have individual membership levels all the way up to business membership levels, where you as a business entity could have like 8, 10 or more of your employees get access to APSE, where they get a lot of great benefits like participating in this. So yeah, we already had a kickoff meeting, but our interest form that I linked there, that's the Google form in chat, actually has the link to the recording of our kickoff, where a lot of questions and just diving into kind of our initial thoughts happened, and we're trying to get the next meetings scheduled. And so we want to offer that to as many people as possible. But again, it is for APSE members. So if you're not a member, please consider joining. You'd support our local chapter. You get all the benefits of national APSE as well. And yeah, get to have your voice really important as we're developing and moving forward.
Thank you so much, Tiffany.
Yeah.
All right. The other.
May I chime in for just a moment? I believe, Tiffany, we also had discussed that if people wanted to come to some of the meetings and they're not APSE members, that they are welcome to join, and we want their voice to be part of this conversation. So it's not please don't let membership be a barrier, but we would invite you to get to know this group. It's a fabulous professional organization and those who join get a lot out of it. So if you just want to dabble and help us in exploring this outcome-based payment structure, it's a great place to plug in, but then it also gets you that exposure to APSI, which is a fantastic organization.
Thank you, Jenny. As I think you can all see, we're really excited about working with APSI. So yes, even if you're not a member, don't let that be a barrier. Please, please, please fill out that interest form. Also, we do have just a general interest form. This one is specifically for HICPUF. But in that interest form, you can kind of designate if you want to work with APSI or the next group that we're going to talk about, which is EFAP. And then we can make sure that your contact information is included in all of that kind of communication and those different things. So the other big organization that we're really engaging with is the Employment First Advisory Partnership. And if folks don't know what EFAP is a legislatively mandated group that is run under the SRC, part of Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. And it's really a unique group when we look at across the United States, because it has 7 different state departments on it, including Healthcare Policy and Financing, the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. We also have our Colorado Office of Employment First, who sits on it. And then it has those, but then it's run, and the agenda of it is really pushed by advocates and the stakeholders who also come in and join with us. And so some of those are members, some of those are individuals with different disabilities, but also providers as well as business owners all come to this. And so what we're excited to really utilize APSI for is really that sequencing. How do we align both of the home and community-based waiver services, this new model, with the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation? But on top of that, how do we even tap into DVR's expertise better than we currently do to, again, really kind of push this idea of employment first? And so that's one of the big things that we're going to be talking about. The other kind of big thing in there is the data. Now, this is data separate really from the billing, but it really looking at how we can better utilize data kind of back and forth to make sure that from kind of a larger perspective, we can start to, if there's issues that are coming up, that we can identify those quickly, we can work towards solutions and different things like that. And so we're really excited about working with EFAP in the Employment First Advisory Partnership. If you guys would like, if either one of these, we really want you guys to be part of either one of these groups or both of these groups. And so as Tiffany said, there's the interest form for APSI, but also there's the general interest form. And so with the EFAP piece and anything else that, including these general stakeholder meetings and just general updates, it's really important that you guys click on that general interest form, so that we can make sure that you guys are added to the email list and the communication avenues that we are going to have. And then finally, these kind of general stakeholder meetings, we'll have these probably quarterly, maybe broken up a little bit more depending on kind of the work that is happening. But it's really important that we have these general ones to make sure everybody has an opportunity to know what's going on, how this is all fitting together, and how we're kind of moving forward with implementation, so that we can make sure that we're planning and we're thinking about the next steps before they hit us, kind of idea. So with that, and before I jump to anything else, there was a question that came in while Tiffany was talking that I saw, that would you be able to give an example of a successful case from the pilot? And so I'm actually going to kick it over to Caitlin, who is one of our pilot providers, and she said that she has a good example.
Yeah. Hi. So I was trying to think about a good example. I mean, I kind of want to back into this from a different perspective. I think for us, the pilot was a great opportunity for us to really embrace what we wanted to see as best practices. And so what we found was that it gave us an opportunity to truly give the individuals what a lot of our folks were asking for, which was not to have a lot of job coaching presence. And so we had, some individuals that were starting to take on more and more hours at work. And the pilot gave us the ability to let them do that in the manner that was appropriate for them. And, started to bring up some good questions around, like, we have folks that would work overtime, and how does that impact the billing that you needed for the pilot, because those hours don't always come consistently. And so, we did have individuals that needed to move back into a phase of the pilot because of things that came up with work, and they needed more job coaching. And we had a lot of flexibility to do that within the pilot. I think it really just supported us as a provider agency, I think, in a manner that allowed us to fade and be supported as we did so. And so, yeah, to give a very specific one, I can't necessarily say of something specific, but we definitely had individuals that I think tested the pilot and what it could handle. And so I'm really excited for what this could look like in the future.
Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you. Thank you. All right, guys. Any other questions? We set 90 minutes, but but we wanted to make sure there was enough time for questions. But we are through the slide deck. And again, we will get the slide deck out. If you guys give us your contact information, we will make sure that we will actually send you this. Caitlin, was there something else you wanted to?
Yeah, sorry, this just crossed my mind. I think one thing too is just like really that sequencing of services. I think one thing that the pilot is going to really just encourage is the idea of like really getting to a good stability place with DVR, and ensuring that that's like they're coming out of DVR in a good spot is going to set providers up for success in the pilots or this incentive-based model. And so I think that was also really important to us, is just ensuring that that hard work really is happening under voc rehab, so that maybe it's less of an impact when they move into the waiver.
It's an incredibly important point. And I think one of the things we're most excited about is that idea of how do we increase that job match? How do we support through VR and through home and community-based services around good job matches that really set people up for success. So yes, thank you guys. Jenny and I will hang out if you guys want to, if you have any other questions or whatnot, but we want to thank everybody for being here. We will make sure everybody that we can contact knows, gets a slide deck, and also we'll let everybody know when the recording is up. And we will see you guys next time. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So I'm gonna add on again, we're closing out, just to say we might have some providers on the line that do not currently provide supported employment services. If you are wanting to get in on this, you can reach out to Adam and myself as well. We'd be happy to talk to you more about a provider who's just getting started, or kind of some like what you would need to do to kind of take that step for your organization. So we're also good resources for folks that have questions from that realm. Adam, I did see a few other things come in.
Yeah.
An expression of being concerned about creaming, specifically providers only wanting to serve people who can work more hours and don't need as much support.
Yes. Again, I think that's one of those pieces we need to bring into the fold of the larger conversation. I do think, though, that we can build this in what we've kind of seen. I think we saw it in the pilot. We also see it in other states, is that if we can really show providers the flexibility that this has, that in reality, it's easy to it becomes much easier under this model to really support people who have very little hours, including people who have a lot of hours. And so, and again, that's another reason why we need to really be thinking about, especially in that maintenance phase, what those payments look like and how we do that to really make sure that providers are supported no matter how many hours the member is actually working or not.
Great. I'm not seeing other questions. I'm seeing a lot of requests for the slides to be sent out and folks adding their emails to the chat. And so before we close out, we'll be sure to snag the chat. Again, another plug for that interest form. That's another way to get your information in front of us. And we will be posting the recording and the slides on our website. If somebody missed this, or you really would have wanted somebody to hear what we're talking about, please direct them in that way, and then they'll have the different ways to get plugged in to this work that we're doing. And we really appreciate all of your time today. Thank you so much. Lonnie, I see a hand. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much for your presentation. This was great. I was just curious as to like a long-term kind of component to this. Have you guys thought about adding like a business component, partnering with companies and businesses where you train a specific position in the company to kind of lessen that need for the back and forth of the job coach, and they can embed it right within their company?
Interestingly enough, I think that over the years we've talked about how do we do that? How do we make that better? I also think that we see in other states too, just the ability, kind of on a smaller scale, the ability for waiver dollars to be directly paid to a natural support that is a peer or coworker or something like that. And so those are all kind of things that we do want to explore. Probably in this first round, we're not going to get there. However, I think that EFAP is the route to take for us to really kind of engage on that, because I think that there's multiple components, including DVR already does business outreach kinds of things and those different types of things. And then I also think that there's a couple of other projects that are happening around the state that are akin or similar to kind of what you're talking about. And I really think EFAP is the place where we're going to engage. Or you can just email Jenny and I, and we can set up a ad hoc meeting and just talk it through and do those kinds of things. So hopefully that was helpful.
Yes, thank you very much.
I have a question. How will this affect people with already established supported employment practices?
So again, I'm just going to know you as a Zoom user, but you really are just asking incredibly great questions. It's one of those things where I think, especially one of the places where I'm most excited about engaging with APSI on is really actually supporting training, and not just training for that front end staff, but also training for middle management and even executive level kind of training, so that the model is better understood. I really think for providers to be successful in this, there are certain tactics and certain best practices that are going to need to be adopted. I think most of the providers have adopted a lot of those, but I do think that this is also a great opportunity for providers to re-engage in those best practices as well. Does that help?
Kind of. I mean, so you said the computer system's starting this summer for this?
Well, it's the build is, yes.
Okay. And I'm sorry, what was the goal date for this to go in?
So it's going to go live so that transition period would start in the summer of 2026.
Okay. All right. So basically what my question is, for people who are already billing for supported employment and getting support and have established customized employment practices, how will this outcome-based change what there are like people who are already out of DVR, they have a job, they have their own business there, and they're receiving, you know, income from their business and support for the people who are helping them do the member, you know, do their business. How will it affect those people?
So you're more specifically asking about you know, supported small businesses, those kinds of things. I
Yeah,
just want
like
to make sure I'm addressing the right group.
yeah, like
Yeah.
yeah, people who are providers who have established customized employment, small businesses with their member.
Yeah. So, you know, so from the small business perspective, we need to, that's one of the places where we really do need to re-engage kind of on that larger scale. So kind of from that EFAP perspective of really looking at the full service spectrum. It's not that those services and supports are necessarily going to go away. It's more that where um, we want to make sure that the right supports and the right services are being accessed from the right angle. I know that sounds really cryptic. It's hard for me to kind of talk about it in a less cryptic way without lots of whiteboarding. But the idea of supported self-employment, the idea of individuals owning their own business is fundamental to employment first. Customized employment as a model is also considered one of the best practices of supported employment that we have. And so both of those things very much will be at the forefront of what we need to discuss so that we make sure that those supports for members who own their own business is there, but also the supports that you need as providing customized employment, that all of those pieces are kind of are thought about and clearly laid out on how to do it so that it's not a guessing game. And that would be our goal, if that makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
All right. I know there's a item in the chat related to membership codes, and that seems to be related to the APSI link that Tiffany had sent. Tiffany, I don't know if you want to unmute and speak to that, but just to say, to join
Yeah.
the ad hoc committee that we are offering, you don't have to join a membership to be part of that committee. But if you're ready to jump in with APSI, that's
Please
available
do.
to you there too. Yes.
Exactly. Yes, and thank you for sending me the screenshot. So sometimes if you do participate in like a national APSI event, they'll send you a code, a discount code for applying. But yeah, we don't have a discount code for this one. So you should be able to leave that field blank in the membership sign up to get into that. We don't have a code. But yeah, good questions.
Since we're let me ask this question. Would it also be helpful to have more sessions specifically like this where kind of the end part, right? Where maybe it's just an hour-long meeting, there's no presentation, or there are some slides that we can kind of share, but really it's just people coming in and asking questions. Because we can absolutely do that even more often than we have these kind of big stakeholder meetings. We can have things like office hours and things like that. And so I can't promise how often or any of that kind of, because we'd have to kind of think that through. But if you guys think that that would be helpful, we please let us know. You can give a thumbs up now or email Jenny or I or anyway, because we would be happy to do that. We will get that set up.
I'm not seeing more questions in the chat at this point. Adam, I might recommend that we can end the recording just so that it's not dead air for folks who join in later. But we can stay on the line if other questions or items come up on a more